talking today all about the alcohol restrictions that have been proposed following concerns raised in recent years by some members of Parliament over public drunkenness and the resultant law and order issues in their constituencies. As you know, the government has set in motion plans to impose a ban on drinking in public places and retail sales of alcohol island-wide between 10:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily. Now, if the law is passed, drinking after 10:30 p.m. can continue only at home, at approved events, or at licensed establishments such as bars, restaurants, and coffee shops. Now, infringements are punishable with a fine of up to $1,000 for a first-time offender, jail of up to 3 months, and a fine not exceeding $2,000 will be imposed on repeat offenders. Shops that sell alcohol after permitted hours also could be hit with a fine not exceeding $10,000. Now, retailers can apply to sell takeaway alcohol until later. However, these will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Organisers of events in public places may also apply for the restriction to be lifted for a specific place and time. Now, the Liquor Controlled Supply and Consumption Bill, tabled on Monday, also proposes to give the Minister for Home Affairs powers to impose even stricter curbs on the supply and consumption of alcohol in areas that might have a significant risk of public disorder associated with excessive consumption of liquor. Now, for a start, parts of Little India, where alcohol-related restrictions have been in place after the December 2013 riot, which would have expired in March, and Geylang, could be declared as the so-called liquor-controlled zones. And the Ministry of Home Affairs has said that controls here will be substantially similar to those that have been implemented in Little India under the Public Order Additional Temporary Measures Act. For instance, public drinking is barred on weekends, public holidays, and the eve of public holidays in Little India. Takeaway sales are also illegal from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. on weekends, public holidays, and the eve of public holidays. Now, the police are also given powers to ban a person for a spell from the area. Flouting the rules in liquor control zones will carry 1.5 times the penalties that we mentioned earlier. Now, the proposed laws are expected to be passed within the first half of this year. So, what do you think of them? Do they go far enough? Or perhaps they go too far. Some people have asked, do the disturbances caused by a minority of troubled drinkers really warrant the imposition of such sweeping curbs? We want to hear from you. 669-11938 is our number. But first, let's speak with Member of Parliament Vikram Nair. He's also member of the Government Parliamentary Committee for Law and Home Affairs. Now, Mr. Nair, let's first of all talk about what some people are saying. If the annoyance caused by a minority of troubled drinkers really warrants the imposition of such sweeping curbs, are you aware of data on the number of public disorder incidents and crimes committed as a result of public drunkenness in order to justify such measures?
I believe the police does keep track of such data, and I understand that in specific areas like Little India and Geylang, the public order incidents are actually quite high, which is why they've been given special treatment. In many other areas, I think it's more an issue of, this has been a long-standing, ongoing problem creating disamenities. So although it's, for example, if it's just a few people drinking in public, say at the void deck, they may cause disamenities for, quite a large number of people living there. So, we get complaints like this, every now and then.
Can you tell us more about the situation in your constituency specifically? I mean, how often do you get such complaints?
In my constituency, it's not that bad. The most common complaints are people who, after the coffee shop closes, carry on drinking in the nearby area, making noise and so on, and sometimes, urinating in void decks, things like that. So it's in fairly specific areas. It's not a general problem. Yet,
the government has decided to make these restrictions island-wide. That is the proposal anyway. Why is that? To prevent the displacement of the problem from one area to another, perhaps?
Yes. A couple of things. First of all, I think, the reality is that given that it's only a small number of people who do actually, drink in public, beyond that time, 10:30 in most places, it will probably not be an imposition on the majority of people. If your usual place of drinking is, say, in a pub with friends or in the coffee shop, all that can continue. This has no effect on drinking within licensed premises. It has no effect on drinking at home. So I think most people will not be affected. The reality, though, is that, in places where there is public drinking, there are usually related public order issues. And I think, some of the discussions we had, we're wondering why, beaches are quite far away. Why do you designate beaches? Or, why do you want to restrict drinking in beaches and so on? But I think the issue was that, if you designate, if you have some areas where you permit drinking, you can be sure that, there will be a focus of drinking in those places. So it's what you're saying, the displacement of the issue. So you don't want, specific areas to become like that too.
669-11938 is our number. Going to the phones right now. Mr. Wong, I hope you're still there. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, sir. You want to weigh in on the issue?
Sorry, I think the rules, if they were to implement it, is way too far. Reason being, we have a lot of so-called rules and regulations to control behavior. If you were to urinate on a certain area, you will be punished in certain offenses, rather than, you stop drinking totally. What if today people gather around to drink a normal drink, but they behave like that? Are you going to stop drinking 10:30 after 10:30 for any normal drinks as well? What I meant is we have rules and so-called regulations to control the behavior and not controlling the drinks. So if they misbehave or even they gather illegally, and that is another offense, they can be charged,
Right, so you're saying that the alcohol consumption should not be a factor. It is about misbehavior, and since we have rules for that, why bother having additional rules that are related to alcohol consumption? Bikram, what do you think of that?
Yes, I think that's a good point. I think the key issue is that right now the rules in relation to misbehavior for alcohol, it requires you to, cross a very high threshold. I think be incapable of taking care of yourself, or in the alternative, really be committing other offenses. Say, assault, battery, fighting. I think the idea of these rules are really that you can stop people before they get to that stage. So if someone has, an open, someone is drinking or something after 10:30, you can just say, please go to your house or, go back to a bar or something like that.
You say that alcohol consumption increases the likelihood of such misbehavior, such conduct in public.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, I think, yeah.
So let's prevent it from getting to that stage, as you've said. However, a lot of people are saying they want to see data on how many public order cases actually involve alcohol consumption.
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave that to the minister when he's introducing the bill. I'm sure they have such data. Yeah.
Has that data been publicly released?
I'm not aware of if it has.
669-11938. Mr. Sim joining us now. Mr. Sim, good morning.
Hi, good morning to you all.
Yes, sir.
In my opinion, the law is not going to be effective because if you are going to place public order in a concern, then I think based on time and location, it's not effective at all.
Why not?
Because if let's say if you are going to put time and location, then are you telling me that a person who gets himself drunk in the middle of the day, he will be well behaved, more sober? I don't think so.
Okay, let's talk about that time issue that you mentioned. Why only at specific times? Bikram, what do you think of what our caller just said?
Well, I think it's...
because there could be people who get drunk and misbehave earlier in the day too.
Yes, so I mean that's why in some areas where alcohol is more of an issue, I think specifically Little India and Geylang, they've been designated with I guess earlier hours stricter rules. But in most other areas, the incidents occur only later in the evening. So it's typically the late night drinking and so on that leads to, I guess, the other public order issues, the nuisance and everything else.
But here's the thing, because now there will be in the future soon these restrictions that you can't drink in public between 10:30 and 7 a.m., do you think the public order issues that are related to alcohol consumption will emerge earlier in the day?
If it does, there is enough flexibility in the bill to make adjustments. But, this is, I guess the first time this is happening in Singapore, but, similar rules exist in places like Australia, UK, and it's not, that difficult to enforce, and it doesn't, I guess, restrict people as much as people imagine it will.
But here's the thing, yes, no doubt other countries have these rules too, but people might want to know why we needed them in Singapore specifically. I mean, just because other countries have them, it doesn't mean that we should adopt them too.
Because we have
obviously
the same, I guess, public order issues related with, public drinking of alcohol. I mean, in areas where I think in some areas it was pretty well documented, right? I mean, places like Clarke Quay and so on, and then once restrictions were put into public consumption so that it's limited to only drinking in establishments, the public order issues dropped very significantly. And, the same Little India has, I think, been under much better control since the rules came in. But you see it, I guess, clearest where behavior is extreme, and then, once you change something, you see the difference. But even in, the heartlands and all that, although I don't have that many issues, I do have issues as well.
Stay with us on 938 Live. We'll continue talking about this in just a moment and going to be taking more of your calls on 669-11938. Talking today about the alcohol restrictions that might be imposed in Singapore. In the first reading of the bill, the government has set in motion plans to impose a ban on drinking in public spaces and the retail sales of alcohol island-wide between 10:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily. What do you think of the restrictions? Have they gone too far? Have they gone far enough? We're joined also today by Member of Parliament Vikram Nair. He's also a member of the Government Parliamentary Committee for Law and Home Affairs. James joins us now, though, on 669-11938. Hi, James.
Hi, morning.
Yes, what do you think, James?
Okay, just now earlier on, I heard someone saying that it's only the actions of a few persons that is drinking in public, right?
Yes, okay.
Some people have that opinion. Some people have that opinion that it's only a few people who do this, so why have such sweeping laws?
Correct. Allow me to give an example. The place where I stay is somewhere near Zouk. And what has really happened is that just for the actions of a few teenage or young drinkers, it has caused a lot of a lot of
unrest
or residents there.
Right.
Because there are about 5 to 6 condos around the area, and there's a primary school there. Just because they puke and they urinate and they dirty the whole place, thousands of school-going children have to bypass the route where they are drinking every morning, especially on public holiday and Friday, whereby you can see children, mates.
Right, I understand. Now, James, tell me whether you think the restrictions that have been proposed go far enough.
I think it's adequate enough. It's not an overkill, because what the few students did was that they actually dirty the whole place, and there are a lot of thousands of people that need to use the same premises the next morning.
Right. So, James, in favor of the proposed restrictions, what do you think? 669-11938 is our number. We're joined also by Member of Parliament Vikram Nair, who is also a member of the Government Parliamentary Committee for Law and Home Affairs. Now, Vikram, I understand that the Ministry of Home Affairs conducted 2 public consultation exercises between October 2013 and August last year, and they got close to 400 pieces of written feedback. MHA, of course, also conducted discussions with over 180 people, including members of the public, grassroots reps, and business owners. There was strong support from most of these respondents for this type of a bill. However, do you think that's enough feedback to go on?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think, on the one hand, it was open for public consultation. Anyone could come forward. 2, there was data from, police and also on public order issues. And 3, I guess they had feedback from, community leaders, members of parliament, and so on issues they had as well. So I think there was quite a broad range consultation. And, of course, the next step is the debate in parliament.
Give us a call, 669-11938. Now, Vikram, Jolovan Wham from the Humanitarian Organization for Migration Economics has actually taken issue with the designation of Little India and Geylang as liquor control zones. He says it's tantamount to profiling and discrimination. Now, they have asked for statistics to show that there has been crime as a result of alcohol consumption in these particular areas. Tell us more about what the data says.
Well, I'll leave that to the police, because I don't know to what extent the data is public, and they might have reasons they don't want to make it public. But, I think even by anecdotally, most people who, live or work in that area will be able to tell you that the law and order issues are significantly greater there.
Call us on 669-11938.
Bala joining us now. Bala, good morning.
Good morning, Keith and Bharati as well as Mr. Nair. I think the policy, the rule, the law coming up is very balanced. It doesn't stop people from drinking after 10 o'clock. It just means that they should do it in the appropriate places, which is their homes or, a proper place. And, obviously there are laws towards protecting it. But I'd like the policymakers to think a little bit further than that. There are a lot of common areas like in condos and in sort of resort areas where people do visit it. And, in decency, I think the law does emphasize the importance of it at night because people want to have a rest. So I think, there should be something which extends further than just public areas. For example, in the condos, the police cannot intervene. So maybe the security there should be empowered, just like they have the right to put wheel clamps on cars and all that. And the same thing applies for a resort area. But honestly, I don't think it's going to stop the the drinking habit. But definitely, it would change people's behaviors to be more aware of others around and, take the consideration that, well, go ahead and drink, but, do it in the right place and make sure that you don't do the wrong things.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Bala. I really appreciate it. Vikram, what do you think of Bala's suggestion that the restrictions could actually go even further?
I think this is a start. Obviously, the laws can go further or, be relaxed a little bit as we start with the implementation. There is enough flexibility in the bill. In relation specifically to, say, condos and so on, actually, that currently is a matter that condos can actually take in their own hands, so they can have their own rules on, when, say, public areas are open. I know condos where, the barbecue pits are closed off at 10:30 quite strictly, function rooms are closed. So I guess, these are ways that you can try and limit the amount of public nuisance that, happens even in, say, private establishments.
Now, alcohol restrictions are common in other countries, as you've mentioned as well. But what went into deciding what was right for us here in Singapore?
It was mainly because of the concern with, public order incidents. In fact, it wasn't. It was interesting because we had a discussion whether this is a reaction to Little India, but in fact, the consultation took place and was concluded the day before the riots, rather fortuitously. So
this preceded the riot, actually.
Exactly. So this was an issue that was brewing. It was. There was concern, and I think this was the way we were planning to address it.
Now, I understand that discretion will be used in enforcement. Can you give us an example of how discretion might be used?
I think by and large, there'll be a soft touch to start with. So if people are caught, the first time they'll probably be given probably told to go somewhere else and carry on rather than stay there. And it's only if they disobey the police, then further action may be taken.
If they are drinking but not causing any trouble?
Yeah, but I think the police will still be obliged to enforce and ask them to move on somewhere else.
In case they get to a stage where they start causing trouble.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about industry players. Several retailers and manufacturers of alcohol and alcoholic beverages do say they share the same concerns as the government about disorder, safety, and antisocial behavior that arises out of public drinking. However, they say that effectively addressing the relevant social issues need not result in denying responsible consumers the convenience of buying liquor for home consumption even after 10:30. What do you think? Can flexibility be exercised at all on this?
We can start where we are now, and then, if necessary and it appears there is scope for relaxing, we could do that. But the reality is that I think the people who would want the licenses to sell alcohol late will be the ones who are open late, and they're open very late. It's probably because they're servicing an area where, people would be awake late. So it seems like, a lot of the issues will be correlated. The neighborhood shops would all close, before that time. So it's likely to be, the shops in town near the clubbing areas and so on. Once you say you allow it for responsible drinkers, it's very hard for the shopkeepers to distinguish between responsible and, the irresponsible, because you don't know what they'll be doing after they buy the alcohol from you.
Mr. Vikram Nair, thank you so much for joining us on Talkback for this section of the program. You can continue to call in at 669-11938. We will continue with your discussion. So keep it right here on 938 Live. We're heading for the news proper in just a moment.
talking about plans to impose a ban on drinking in public spaces and retail sales of alcohol island-wide to be restricted. Between 10:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily, you will not be allowed to drink in public places. What do you think? Do the alcohol restrictions go far enough, or are they going a little too far? The Liquor Controlled Supply and Consumption Bill was tabled in Parliament on Monday, and it also proposes to give the Minister for Home Affairs powers to impose even stricter curbs on the supply and consumption of alcohol in areas with significant risk of public disorder associated with the consumption of liquor. And for a start, parts of Little India, where these restrictions have been in place since after the December 2013 riot, and Geylang could be declared as so-called liquor control zones. What do you think of all of these measures? Do you agree that perhaps they are needed in our climate, or do you think that really they are not needed? On the other hand, do we have to wait for such public disorder incidents to hit extremes before we support such curbs?
669-11938. Felicia joining us. Felicia, it's been a while.
Hi there.
Hi.
Keith and Bharati.
Good morning, Felicia.
Morning. Yeah, okay. Drinking after 10:30 p.m. can continue only at home. So I would like to ask is, what can neighbors do in the event of a rowdy behavior, such as like throwing beer bottle down the rubbish chute and unpleasant noise? Now, how can the police help us?
You should be able to call the police and tell them.
And have them arrive at a timely manner.
Yes.
Okay.
I would think so. Because there are rules about noise, there are rules about behavior,
Yes.
and even if you are behaving badly and you say, I'm behaving badly within my home, it's none of
Right.
your business. If it's causing disruption to your neighbors, call the
But
police.
I think after 12. It happens after 12.
There are NEA regulations on noise pollution,
Okay.
and it's 10:30 onwards. You have to, try and keep
See, I
it
learn
down.
something new every day. I shall be using the phone lines very often these
Well, I
days.
know about 10:30 p.m. being the time, the cutoff point for you to start quietening down.
Sure.
Because it's right there at the void deck. You would see some notices as well by the NEA from the NEA. 669-11938 is our number. So Felicia was a little concerned that, public drinking is not allowed, but you can still do it at home. And if you misbehave at home to the point that it disrupts the peace of your neighbors, is there anything I can do? Well, based on what I know about the rules, yes, you can. Let's see what Gerald has to say about this. Hi, Gerald.
Hi. I feel that there are basically two issues. One is we're dealing with transient workers, and I think the law seems to stem from there. But I think
no, not really, actually. Let's face it, the public consultations on these issues actually began even before the Little India riot. And a lot of people tell me that the people at the void decks who misbehave as a result of alcohol consumption are Singaporeans, not just the transient workers.
What about, fair enough, what about the issue? My family, we have been to places where kids have chalet gathering and all that, and I see a lot of young kids drinking and being very rowdy and all that. So I think there's a greater issue at hand here, which is dealing with teenage drinking issues, illegal, and that is something which I hope they will also look into.
Right, so illegal drinking, if underage drinking
sympathize.
is an issue for sure, so that too needs to be enforced.
The barbecue pits at the beach, I think that will be a no-go zone for booze after a while.
Here's the thing, it is the stores.
Indeed.
That's where the problem lies.
Okay, let's face
People
the thing.
are able to, even when they're underage, they are able to buy liquor from these stores, or they get someone to buy the liquor for them. They're able to go into bars that also sometimes don't enforce some of these rules. So that's where the problem lies. Perhaps there needs to be greater emphasis on enforcement of those laws and rules.
And when they can't get into the bars, you are right. In the retail sector, it's much cheaper.
And they'll say, fine, I'll sell it to you. And they take it, go
And these
outside, and they cause a
mind-numbing
ruckus.
spirits.
So perhaps those are the issues that also need to be more under the spotlight. Thank you, Gerald, for raising those, talking about the alcohol restrictions that have been proposed, and they're expected to be passed in the next 6 months. Do you think they go far enough, or do they go a little too far? Today, talking all about the proposed ban on drinking in public places and the retail sales of alcohol island-wide also to be restricted. Between 10:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. daily, you will not be allowed to drink in public places. Now, all of this actually comes after public consultations. So there was, during the public consultations, strong support for such measures.
I would like to reiterate it was before the Little India riots.
Yes, indeed. So a lot of you think that it might have been as a result of the Little India riot, but no. This was way before. The government was already conducting public consultations on this. Over 400 pieces of feedback were received. Almost 200 people were consulted, including stakeholders in the issue, industry players as well. So we want to know, now that this has been proposed and the bill has been tabled for its first reading at least, what do you think about the proposed measures? Are they going too far or are they too lax? Perhaps you feel they could be even stricter, even more stringent.
We'll take some
Eileen. Eileen joins us now. Hi, Eileen. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Morning, ma'am.
Yeah, I think it's gone a little bit too far. Because let's say if you've got a gathering outside, let's say in a chalet, so sometimes we are drinking wine, so is it considered illegal?
If the establishment, I believe, does not have a liquor license, it might be.
Yeah, that's why I think it's gone a bit too far for that.
So you feel that you are entitled to go there and start drinking in a public place like a chalet?
Yeah, I think so, because it's the family gathering is controlled.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, and some people might say if you drink indoors or even in the compound of the chalet, that would be considered a private space. You've paid to use that space for the night. It's yours, it's private space.
Which brings up the question we were talking about. A little angler on the weekend going to a fishing pond with his six-pack in a cooler, just sipping in, not bothering anybody, and casting his rod. Would that constitute
public drinking?
Yes.
Perhaps some clarity is required on how all of these laws will be implemented and will be enforced. Of course, many say that there needs to be discretion as well exercised in this case. If the police feel that what is happening or what the people who are drinking in the public space are doing is harmless, they're quite well behaved, perhaps they should let them off the hook.
Fair enough.
But my issue is, so when the police does its patrol, they let them off the hook. An hour later, these guys might be so inebriated that they're not behaving themselves anymore. So do we have to wait for it to get to that stage before the police can enforce such rules? Which is why there are rules on public drinking, or there will be rules on public drinking, so that even just the presence of the alcohol in a person's hand while he's in public might be actionable by law. Give us a call, 669-11938.
Chen
joins us.
Good morning.
Hi, Mr. Chen. What do you think?
I think it's overboard. It's going to behave like that. Singapore will be a country with all the restrictions of rules. And especially the retailers is 10:30 to 6, 7 a.m. Most of the retailers now is 24 hours. And we have a lot of restriction on drinking, and then the business will drop about 30%.
Right, but think about all those people who have complained about unruly behavior in their neighborhood as a result of public drinking. What do you have to say to those people who are concerned about law and order issues?
I think the police come and disperse off the group which is misbehaved, that's it. But it cannot just based on the rules in the way that the whole place is people cannot drink in the public, and it's too much to over just like chewing gum. That's it.
Mr. Chen, can I ask you why you feel the need to drink in public?
I think in public sometimes we do have some gatherings like friends. Of course, you have to behave yourself in the public when you drink. But if you misbehave, the public call and then the complaint come in, the police can stop you from drinking. That's it. But you cannot restrict the whole society in the district way of people drinking and celebrating sometimes. Of course, you have to behave yourself. But in a country with so much restriction in Singapore, I think it's very sad.
Thank you very much for expressing that view. Of course, some argue, why wait for it to turn into a public disorder
Indeed.
issue before taking action?
Right.
So, of course, he says, if the people misbehave, then
Take
enforce
action.
law and take action against only those people who misbehave as a result of alcohol consumption. Why make it a blanket rule for everyone else who's also well behaved? Even if they were drinking alcohol, they don't misbehave. Give us a call, 669-11938.
Bondi, I hope I've got your name right, sir.
Yeah, that's right.
Go ahead, sir. Your question or your comment.
I think it's a little bit too strict. Regarding the public consultation, I probably think they did not consult those pioneer generations. You tend to see some of the uncles, a couple of them, getting a can of beer sitting at the park, just chit-chatting away. So is that going to be disallowed going forward?
Yeah, you won't be able to drink in parks under the new rules. Yeah.
Yeah, I seriously doubt the public consultation includes this group of people.
Let's face it, you can't make everyone happy, but do
Sure.
you think these rules might actually be good for Singapore in general?
I still think it's too strict. I think previously you discussed about it, and I was talking about it as well. I still think it's too strict. Although I'm not a drinker myself, but I think it's to me so easy on the rules, man. I know
But if it can prevent public disorder issues and crime, don't you think that should be the priority? The prevention of such incidents rather than the freedom to drink in public?
Well, I guess it's a balance of both. I understand the residents in Little India area, they have their concerns. I was there for a couple of years myself, so I know what they mean by the pain that they have. I guess they've got to find a balance, but
what do you think would be a good way of imbuing this whole process with some balance? What do you think would be a good balanced approach?
I think first and foremost, we are popular for our campaign. You probably should start something like that first. I think they consulted, they look at the policies in Australia and England and all that. But I think one thing they missed out is that the culture in all the countries are different. So if you're going to start something where people have been building up for many years, and you're going to start it just like, they have sat for 30 years, and you say, okay, I'm going to follow them after 30 years, and I'm going to follow them, what have they done right at the 30th stage. You've forgotten that they built it up for 30 years. So,
so how do you think the differences in culture factor into this whole situation and how we decide what we do in Singapore?
Okay, in Australia, you don't get the problem of people drink. Not that you don't. Okay, you do have. They're strict on those things. Once you're being caught, and you got to face serious penalties about it. But most people, the culture is they stay indoors. They stay. Even their houses, the signs that they have a balcony where people will just sit down and drink, be it beers, wine, teas, or whatnot. So that's what they do.
So in Singapore, don't you think we can have a similar situation?
Well, our 4-room flat doesn't really have that big a balcony to start with.
So you're saying it's also a space issue, that some people perhaps drink outside in parks, so on and so forth, because of other issues that we have, space constraints, your house is overcrowded.
I don't want to see my wife.
And a lot of people perhaps drink outside but don't mean to cause a public disturbance. They do so peacefully. So why should they be penalized is what Bondi is asking. What do you think? Our last caller for the day.
Maureen, good morning.
Hello, Maureen here.
Yes, ma'am.
The cut-off time is like 10:30. It's a bit too early, you see. And I would suggest like probably up to 11, But it is not so widespread if you're talking about all this rowdy, drinking, other than the Little India story, you see. And I feel that
I should point out that all of this came up for public consultation before the Little India situation. Apparently, there have been complaints in HDB areas, so on and so forth, about people just being rowdy at the void decks after having had a tipple.
But they're not so widespread, Probably what I feel that if you want to prevent all this unruly, probably it might not work. But my suggestion is probably after the cut-off time, maybe one person can only buy 2 cans.
Okay, so
Right.
limit the
That's only
the
way.
purchase. Okay.
But mainly, these people, if you're talking about Singaporeans, basically, local people, they don't have that kind of time to drink until early morning and cause a row, unless those are loafers, you see.
Well,
Can I invite you to my house, Maureen?
Keith claims there are loafers in his neighborhood.
Yes.
And we're talking about Singaporeans here.
Singaporeans,
And
yes.
kids as well. One of our
Yes.
callers earlier brought up how teenagers are doing this almost regularly in
Yes,
certain
on a weekend,
neighborhoods.
and the spike in occasions when the holiday season rolls around.
So Maureen was suggesting a balance in the sense that perhaps it could be the restrictions could only kick in at 11 p.m. Perhaps 10:30 p.m. is too early. And she said instead of restricting completely,
Indeed.
why don't we just put a restriction on the amount of liquor you can buy after 11 p.m.? What do you think of that compromise? Bondi called in earlier to say that he would have preferred it if there were public education campaigns on such
Indeed.
issues instead of just rules being imposed to restrict drinking.
Too far, not enough. Well, we've got a balance of opinions today.
Indeed we do, and if you want to continue talking to us, please do so on our Facebook page, Official 938 Live. Many thanks for your phone calls today.